Let's build Aerith from Final Fantasy VII in Dungeons & Dragons. And there's actually a little random tidbit as to why it's Aerith and not Aerith, despite the fact that both translations from Japanese to English both technically work. But I'll save that little trivial fact for the end of this video. For now, we gotta start with the race. And there's a lot of good choices for Aerith, as she is a half human, half Sentra. So we're gonna actually go with a Kalishtar. Kalishtar are the unions of humans with the renegade spirits from the plane of dreams. And there's the whole life stream thing in Final Fantasy VII. So if you use that as a idea of the plane of dreams, it can kind of work there. Kalishtar get advantage on wisdom saving throws, which is always nice to have, and they get some unique mental abilities. And continuing with the idea that the life stream is part of your background and origins, we're going to choose Astral Drifter for your background. Astral Drifters have experienced the void and are more familiar with the astral plane. So if we can kind of try to connect that with the life stream as well, we're going to go ahead and go for it. This gives us skill proficiencies in Insight and Religion. This does also give us the feat Magic Initiate, but forces us to stick with Cleric for that option, meaning that we're going to get a couple Cleric cantrips and one spell that we can cast once per day for free, and at the same time added to our prepared spell list. But we have to use Wisdom for all of that casting. We'll grab a handful of spells in just a second, but I just wanted to make sure I noted that. First, let's dive into the ability scores. We're going to have a point spread that looks like this. Notice that we have a decent amount of wisdom, but I do find Aerith to be very charming, so I really boosted up that charisma. Then when it comes to the starting class, there's a little disclaimer here. We're going to be doing a 3-way multi-class. You can take these levels in any order, but I'm going to be taking them specifically in what you would get as far as Aerith's abilities in the game. However, if you wanted to optimize, there's a different order you probably want to take them in, and I will call that out as we go. And I needed those multi-classes because the main focus of this build is actually the limit breaks that Aerith has access to, because in the games, that is most of what makes Aerith different, because basically any character can pick up materia and be able to cast with it. So we will make sure we have the ability to hit most materia we would use, but at the same time, we really got to focus on those limit breaks. But no matter what, I feel like the best starting class while staying true to Aerith is going with a Druid. This gives us 2 skill proficiencies, so we're going to take Nature and Arcana, and we get some spell casting. We're going to want to grab Druid Grove, so that way you can raise up some flowers for yourself a little more easily, and we'll also grab Shillelagh, so that way you can bonk people with your staff a little more easily. You do also get to pick up some actual low-level spells here beyond cantrips, but we'll touch on those in just a second. Because first, I'm going to go ahead and take our second level in Druid. This is actually where you could optimize and jump into a different multi-class right away, but if you're going to go ahead and try and stay very true to Aerith, I would go ahead and at least take one more level in Druid here. This gives us a Druid subclass, so I would go with the Druid Circle of the Shepherd. While this subclass does try to focus so heavily on summoning, if you use it for just healing, which is the main ability that Aerith gets early on as far as her limit breaks go, it's actually really powerful because it gives you the feature Spirit Totem. So once per short or long rest, as a bonus action, you can summon down some sort of spirit to help you and your allies. You can use the Bear Spirit, which will grant some advantage on strength checks and give some temp HP to your allies. You can grab the Hawk Spirit, allowing you to use your reaction to give one of your allies advantage on an attack, while also giving all of your allies advantage on perception checks. But if you want that Healing Wind limit break, there's nothing better than the Unicorn Spirit. Healing Wind is all about healing all of your allies, and that's exactly what Unicorn Spirit does. You create this fairly large aura, and then anytime you heal anybody inside or outside of the aura, everybody inside the aura gets healing equal to your level in Druid, which I know isn't a ton, but every little bit of healing in D&D is actually pretty impactful. Then when it comes to the Druid spells I would grab with these first 2 levels, I would definitely focus mostly on healing to really amp up that Unicorn Spirit. I know our spellcasting modifier isn't super high, so we don't want to be losing out on every possible attack roll with any sort of DC that's way too low or spell attack modifier that's too low to get past any armor classes. So focusing just on healing is going to be pretty helpful. So we're going to grab Cure Wounds, Healing Word, and Good Berry. Good Berry is going to have the lowest amount of healing with this because you actually just spawn a bunch of berries into existence and each one of them heals just 1 point of health, which isn't a lot, but there are 10 berries that are created this way. So in total, that's 10 points of health you can give back. Now we're going to do our first multi-class. And this is where if you wanted to optimize or you needed a bit more damage, you wouldn't go this route. You would go with what the third class we're going to choose is. But I want to focus very much on healing, at least early on, because that's really what Aerith was really good at early in the games. So we're going to multi-class into Cleric. When you become a Cleric, you get to choose a Cleric subclass right away, otherwise known as a Divine Domain. And we're going to choose Life Cleric because we're really focusing on the healing. And this gives us the feature Disciple of Life. And this is going to amp up all of our healing pretty considerably, even though we're at a pretty low level. So thanks to this feature, whenever you use a spell of first level or higher that restores some hit points, you can restore an additional amount of hit points equal to 2 plus the spell's level. So Goodberry becomes way more effective because now instead of having 10 berries that increase your health by 1 point each one of them now increases your health by 4 points because you have that 1 point of base health plus your Disciple of Life granting an extra 2 hit points plus 1 more for the spell's level, making it a total of 4 hit points per berry, bringing you to 40 health regenerated for a first level spell, which is pretty solid even if you do have to sit there munching on some berries for a while. You also get some spell casting being a first level cleric, but we're again going to be focusing just on stuff that we don't have to worry too heavily on our wisdom score yet. However, one of Aerith's limit break abilities is Planet Protector, which essentially grants invincibility. So we can grab a cantrip like Resistance, but as far as first level spells, we're going to want to grab Sanctuary and Shield of Faith, making a point to protect an ally at all costs. Then we're going to go ahead and grab one more level in Cleric right now. This gives us access to Channel Divinity, which we can use as a Cleric once per short or long rest right now. And the Channel Divinity option you get by being a Life Cleric is Preserve Life. So you can restore a number of hit points equal to 5 times your Cleric level to anybody within 30 feet of you. You do have to split up the amount of hit points that you're healing amongst the overall party that you're trying to heal, so you can't really just give everybody a ton, but it's still a mass AoE heal early on. Now that we have 2 levels in 2 different classes, it's time for one more multi-class. And with all of that charisma that we have, it's time to dive into Sorcerer. We need to dive into Sorcerer for a few different reasons, but most notably, we have a lot of charisma, so this is going to be our main casting class. So this is where we're going to get most of our damaging spells from other materia that we would get throughout the games. So we'll grab cantrips like Frostbite and Firebolt for materia that would coordinate to ice and fire. We'll also grab a couple first level spells like Shield, so that way we can protect ourselves a little better, and Magic Missile, because in the Final Fantasy VII Remake, you're very often kind of like shooting these weird little energy projectiles at your enemies. So Magic Missile is probably the best way to replicate this. And it doesn't even require any sort of spellcasting modifier. It just automatically hits, which is kind of nice to have. Also at first level of Sorcerer, you do get a Sorcerer subclass, which we're going to be diving into more healing here, or at least getting more access to healing spells, because we're going to choose the Divine Soul Sorcerer. Becoming a Divine Soul Sorcerer gives you access to the entire Cleric spell list for your Sorcerer casting. It also gives you the feature Favored by the Gods, so if you fail on a saving throw, you can add a 2d4 to it if you really need to. And just by being a good aligned character, you automatically get Cure Wounds added to your spell list for free. So if you got it from somewhere else, you can wind up replacing it. You could probably argue a level of neutrality instead if you really wanted to, which would give you the spell Protection from Evil and Good. Then at second level of Sorcerer, you get Font of Magic. So now you have a number of sorcery points equal to your level in Sorcerer, and you can spend them on things like regenerating some spell slots if you need to, which does slightly tie into the final limit break that Aerith gets in Final Fantasy VII, which is called Great Gospel, which allows you to regain health and mana simultaneously. But unfortunately, there's not a lot of ways to regain mana in D&D. That limit break also makes everybody invincible for a short period of time, so overall it's pretty powerful. Those sorcery points go a little further once you hit third level in Sorcerer though, because then you can spend them on things like metamagic. Metamagic allows you to alter your spells in certain ways, and one of the very key reasons that I chose to go into Sorcerer is because of metamagic, because now you can use twin spell, because many of the limit breaks that Aerith uses in Final Fantasy is casting on multiple party members. So having access to twin spell allows you to cast a spell that would target 2 creatures instead. Not to mention there's actually a materia that would allow you to double cast anyways. So this generally works on 2 levels. We'll also go ahead and grab Quicken spell just because it's pretty handy to have, allowing you to take a spell that would take 1 action to cast and cast it as a bonus action instead. Then at 3rd level of Sorcerer, you get access to 2nd level spells. And there's 2 spells that we want to make sure we grab from any spell list depending on where you're doing your multiclassing. And both of them revolve around the limit break, Seal Evil, because this limit break both paralyzes and silences your enemies. So the 2 spells that we're going to grab are Hold Person and Silence. But the other 2nd level spell that we need to make sure we grab is thanks to the limit break Breath of the Earth, which does remove a lot of negative effects from you. So we're going to grab the spell Lesser Restoration. Then at 4th level of Sorcerer, you get access to an ability score improvement. So let's go ahead and boost up that Charisma, helping out our main casting modifier. Then at 5th level of Sorcerer, you get access to 3rd level spells. So we can grab some materia stuff like Haste or Fireball, or we can focus more on healing with Mass Healing Word. At 6th level of Sorcerer, we get access to another feature from being a Divine Soul Sorcerer called Empowered Healing. So if you roll some healing and you feel like it's not enough, you can re-roll the number by spending 1 sorcery point. Then at 7th level of Sorcerer, you get access to 4th level spells. And focusing more on that Planet Protector limit break, we're going to grab Death Ward, because you need some more types of invincibility, so having Death Ward at your disposal is just going to be super helpful. It basically makes you unkillable, but only once. But now we've actually covered pretty much all of the main limit breaks from the original Final Fantasy VII. Healing Wind is a massive heal, which we already have covered. Seal Evil is a combination of Hold Person and Silence, because it does paralyze your enemies and at the same time silence them. Breath of the Earth allows you to remove some negative effects, which we already have covered with Lesser Restoration. Planet Protector we have covered in multiple ways at this point. Pulse of Life is another limit break, but that is a combination of healing and removing negative effects. So we don't have a lot of ways to do this with one big spell unless we got to a super high level, but we're not going to get there with just one class. So unfortunately, we do have to wind up doing a weird combination here. And Great Gospel is actually the hardest one because it does create invincibility, it heals a bunch of your allies, and it restores some mana. So we can restore our own mana, and we can wind up healing plenty, and we can do invincibility. So we just kind of got to stagger it out, unfortunately. So Great Gospel does fall a little bit short. The only one we can't really cover is Fury Brand, because that allows everybody else to get their limit breaks pretty much all at once, and we don't have a great way to do that. But we did cover the majority of them, and we're not even all the way through this build. So we have ways to boost up those limit breaks even further. So then at 8th level of Sorcerer, you get another ability score improvement. So let's go ahead and max out that Charisma. Then at 9th level of Sorcerer, you get access to 5th level spells. So we'll boost up the removal of negative effects with making Lesser Restoration, Greater Restoration. We'll be able to paralyze more creatures with that Seal Evil by upgrading our Hold Person to Hold Monster, and we'll get a bit more healing with Mass Cure Wounds. Then at 10th level of Sorcerer, you do wind up getting another metamagic option. So I just went ahead and grabbed Extended Spell because there are a few amount of spells here that have a decent duration, and if you wind up extending them, they become way more valuable. Extended Spell doubles the overall duration of any spell that you might cast, as long as it already has some duration of 1 minute or longer, but it can only be maxed out at 24 hours, which is plenty. Then at 11th level of Sorcerer, you get access to 6th level spells. And there are 2 spells that we really want to grab here. One is Heal. It is just a big AoE heal. There's no getting around it. That is just super helpful, especially for the Healing Wind stuff. But if you want a way to make everybody invincible, you can also grab Globe of Invulnerability. It creates a 10-foot radius sphere around you, which can definitely cover most of your allies. And any 5th level spell or lower that is cast from outside of that sphere winds up not being able to affect anything inside of it. So this can help replicate both Great Gospel and Planet Protector. Then we'll go ahead and grab one more level in Sorcerer, giving us one more ability score improvement. And we'll go ahead and boost up our Wisdom because that does help most of our spellcasting that isn't related to being a Sorcerer. Then let's dive back through our multi-classes. We're going to go ahead and take 2 more levels in Druid. This is going to help our AoE healing to a decent amount with the overall Unicorn Spirit stuff because it is focused so heavily on the amount of levels we have in Druid, even if this is very late in the game at this point. We can use our fire materia for heat metal, but we can focus more on growing some plants and stuff with spells like Wither and Bloom or Spike Growth, but also you can grab Healing Spirit for a bit more healing as well. Now that we have access to second level spells as a Druid, which we get at third level, but as far as the fourth level of Druid, we get another ability score improvement, so let's go ahead and boost up that Wisdom again. Then we have 2 more levels to play around with, so might as well jump back over to Cleric. This gives us access to a little bit more Cleric spell casting, so we have other ways to grab Silence if we need it, and we can grab Prayer of Healing. And it also helps out our Preserve Life Channel Divinity. The very last level of this overall build does bring us to 4th level of Cleric, which does give us 1 more ability score improvement, so let's go ahead and max out that Wisdom. So both our Wisdom spell casting and our Charisma spell casting are both maxed out at this point. We are maxed as a character, and we do have a bit low on the health pool, but we do have access to medium armor, so we can have a decent armor class if we really want it. If you want to pretend that the very light dress that Aerith wears is actually somehow medium armor. And we have the 14 points in dexterity, allowing us to boost up that armor class a tiny bit. So we might not be completely one shot at any point, but overall, I think this covers the feel of Aerith, even if it is a bit all over the place. I was in a general Square Enix mood, playing a lot of Final Fantasy XIV online, so I put it up for a vote on my Discord, and this is who they voted for. I am fighting a little bit through a bit of sickness to try and get this video out, but overall, I'm pretty happy with the result. If you like D&D related content, feel free to subscribe, because apparently it helps you roll more nat 20s in your D&D sessions. And if you want access to the character sheet for this build or any of my other builds, feel free to check out my Patreon, linked in the description down below, where I will have the full spell list for all of the materia related spells that I may or may not have touched on here, as well as all the healing spells and everything else related to this build. Not to mention, my patrons really help support this channel. Here they are scrolling on by. They are super awesome, and I have some especially awesome player character patrons: Alone, The Holy 999s, Christopher Sams, Dark of Skies, Barrow Skrull, Zach, Felix Ulick, The 10586, Barrelisk, Kevin Shirley, Zephyros, That Funny Man 57, Joshua Maynard, CGC 2014, Panda Milkshake, Ted Z, Andrew Nobles, Karkek Kitsune, Deckard Joint, Z13, Viral Nerevar, Daniel Gavin, and the Dino 21. Then there's the Dungeon Master level patrons that I actually play D&D with: Silas Uchiha 696, T Brownie, Julia B. De Oliveira, Just Wolf, Shane Gilroy, Daniel Saffler, Common ZX, Cyberciety, and Salvador. Then there's the contributor to an insane degree, my god tier level patron, GameSteak. So a very special thank you to him. And if you made it all the way to the end of this video, let me know by hitting that like button, and I'll be here hoping you roll at least 3 nat 20s in your next D&D session. And if you were wondering why it wound up being Aerith and not Aeris, despite the fact that both translations technically work from Japanese to English, well, it turns out it's partially because Aerith is a somewhat close anagram to the word earth. As in, if you get rid of that I, you can recombine the letters and it will spell out earth, where you couldn't really do that if you used Eris. At least that's what it says on the wiki. But let me know if there's anything you would change in this build, and hopefully you roll plenty of nat 20s playing some D&D, especially if you want to play as Aerith from Final Fantasy VII in Dungeons & Dragons.